Did you know that in 2026, politicians no longer have to stop black people from voting to weaken black political power? Now, they can simply redraw the map. Follow if you've never heard this story. Because while most Americans were going to work, dropping kids off at school, scrolling social media, and living normal life, court rulings were issued, district maps were redrawn, and black voting power across parts of the South quietly changed overnight. This is the story of racist redistricting. This is the story of gerrymandering. And this is why many civil rights leaders say America is watching a modern version of Jim Crow unfold in real time. Different century, different language, same fight over power, and most people have absolutely no idea it's happening. So let's break this down clearly, because you need to understand exactly what is happening right now. Not 10 years ago, not during slavery, not during the civil rights movement. Right now. In 2026. Number 1. What is redistricting? Every 10 years after the United States Census, states redraw congressional districts based on population changes. That process is called redistricting. Now, on paper, that sounds reasonable. Count the population. Adjust the lines. Make sure districts have equal numbers of people. Simple, neutral, fair. But in reality, redistricting is one of the most powerful political weapons in America. Because whoever draws the lines controls representation, and whoever controls representation controls policy. Money, schools, roads, healthcare, resources, power. Now imagine this. You have a majority black city. If that city remains together in one congressional district, those voters can elect representatives who reflect their community. They have political influence. But if lawmakers split that same city into 3 different districts and combine each section with surrounding rural counties, suddenly, that same black community loses its voting strength. Same voters, same people, same ballots, different map, different outcome. That is not accidental. That is strategy, and it has a name. Gerrymandering number 2. What is gerrymandering? The term dates back to 1812, but racial gerrymandering exploded after slavery ended because once black Americans gained voting rights, white political leaders across the South immediately started looking for ways to weaken black political power. Not always by banning voting directly. Sometimes by manipulating maps, separating black communities, containing black voting influence, protecting white political control. And today there are 2 major techniques, packing and cracking. You need to know both. Packing means concentrating as many black voters as possible into one district. That guarantees one black district, but weakens black influence everywhere else. One district becomes overwhelmingly black, while surrounding districts become overwhelmingly white and conservative. Now let's talk about cracking. Cracking is when lawmakers split black neighborhoods into multiple districts, so black voters never become the majority anywhere. Their influence is diluted, spread thin, mathematically weakened, and critics say that is exactly what happened recently in Memphis, Tennessee. Now here's the irony. Most Americans hear the word gerrymandering and think it sounds technical, boring, complicated, but this is not abstract. This affects real power, real communities, real representation. Number 3. Why the Voting Rights Act mattered. To understand why people are outraged right now, you have to understand what protections once existed. March 7, 1965. Selma, Alabama. Hundreds of civil rights marchers crossed the Edmund Pettus Bridge demanding voting rights, and they were met with violence. Clubs, tear gas, state troopers on horseback. The entire country watched black Americans get beaten on television for demanding the right to vote. That day became known as Bloody Sunday, and months later, President Lyndon Johnson signed the Voting Rights Act of 1965, one of the most important civil rights laws in American history. Now, the law had 2 major protections. First, certain states with long histories of racial discrimination had to get federal approval before changing voting laws or district maps. That was called pre-clearance. Second, communities could challenge district maps if they unfairly weakened minority voting power. And here's the important part. You didn't have to prove racist intent. You only had to prove discriminatory impact. That distinction protected Black communities for decades, but over time, those protections began collapsing, and critics say we are seeing the consequences right now. Number 4, what happened in Tennessee? Now let's talk about Memphis, because this is where many people say the outrage becomes impossible to ignore. Memphis is Tennessee's largest majority Black city, a city deeply tied to Black history and civil rights history. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated there in 1968. And now, in 2026, new congressional maps divided the Memphis-based district into multiple Republican-leaning districts. Critics argue the move weakened Black voting power by dispersing Black voters into larger white-majority districts. Some lawmakers called it modern voter dilution. Others called it Jim Crow 2.0. Now think about the irony here. The same city where sanitation workers marched for dignity, the same city where Dr. King died fighting for Black workers, now finds its congressional influence fractured through lines drawn on a map. Different tactic, same struggle. Control representation, control political power. And many civil rights leaders warn that Tennessee may only be the beginning. Because similar debates are already happening in other southern states: Louisiana, Alabama, South Carolina, Georgia, Mississippi. The fight over voting power is happening right now, in real time. Number 5, what you can do right now. First, know your district. Most people do not even know what congressional district they live in. Look it up. See whether your district lines changed recently. Second, pay attention to local elections, because governors and state legislatures often control the map drawing process, not just presidents. Local elections matter enormously. Third, support organizations fighting voting rights battles in court. Groups like the NAACP Legal Defense Fund and voting rights advocates are actively challenging disputed maps. And finally, stay loud. Because silence helps these strategies succeed. Many of these decisions happen quietly: long meetings, technical language, minimal media coverage. The less attention people pay, the easier it becomes. Now let's bring this all together. The battle over Black voting power in America never truly ended. The tactics evolved. The language changed. The strategy adapted, from poll taxes to literacy tests to modern gerrymandering. The fight has always centered around one question: who gets political power in America? And in 2026, that fight is still happening. Right now, on your watch. Subscribe and comment voting rights if you'd like to hear more about the ongoing battle over Black political representation and power, and go to my videos to see more in-depth hidden Black stories. We don't glorify injustice. We reveal truth, so history can't repeat itself.